Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope and pray that you all are doing well tonight. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He blesses you, blesses your families, our communities, and our brothers and sisters all over the world, Ya Rabbil Alameen, especially the ones that are being oppressed, whether in Gaza, in Palestine, in Sudan, in Kashmir, in Yemen, in Turkestan, and elsewhere, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps them, assists them, and brings about His victory soon. To proceed, inshallah ta'ala, we are continuing through our series discussing the relationship between da'wah and du'a. The relationship between being a good da'i and a good da'i, a good caller who calls to Allah and a good caller who calls upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, in this episode, inshallah ta'ala, we will discuss what are the things that can stop my du'a from being accepted. And the last one is the one that relates to da'wah. So, first off, aklul haram. The first thing that's very commonly known is consuming anything that is unlawful. And unlawful here doesn't mean strictly how is something slaughtered or whether it's halal, like halal in the common modern, the biha sense. Is our source of income halal, meaning is it pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not? This is really the main question. This comes from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that's very known. الرجل الأشعث أغبر يطيل السفر يمد يديه يقول يا رب يا رب فأنا يستجاب له ومطعمه من حرام ومشربه من حرام وملبسه من حرام وغذي بالحرام فأنا يستجاب له. Right? In the hadith it says that there's a man who is traveling. We obviously know that a traveler, his dua is accepted. He ash'ath, he's disheveled, aghbar, he's dirty. He has a need obviously for making the dua, but Allah subhanahu, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, why would Allah ever accept this person's dua when what he eats is unlawful, what he drinks is unlawful, what he wears is unlawful. Now it could be that the essence of those things is unlawful, or that the source, meaning the income that he had, was unlawful. And that seems to be the case, that it's actually both, it's a mixture of both. وَغُذِّيَ بِالْحَرَامِ, meaning he's been fed haram for so long, like it's entrenched in who he is. Obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to accept this person. Sa'ad bin Waqqas, radiallahu anhu ardah, the great companion of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the 10 who are giving glad tidings of Jannah, when he was asked, how is it that your dua is accepted? And he said, it is because I made sure that anything that I consume, it's from a good and pure source. So that's number one. Number two is giving up. And this is where the person says, I've been making dua for so many years, nothing has happened, so I stopped. The person gave up. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, he says, يُسْتَجَابُ لِأَحَدِكُمْ مَا لَمْ يَعْجَلْ. You will be answered in your dua as long as you are not hasty. And they said, what is being hasty, Ya Rasulullah? And he said, being hasty is where you say, I've been making dua for so long and nothing has happened, so I give up and I stop. And that's when you're being hasty, meaning you should be continuing to make dua no matter what. And this is why we have to be insistent, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so that's number two. Number three is not being persistent and not being insistent. Insistent meaning that I can't say, Ya Rab, forgive me if you want, give me Jannah if you want. You think that you're being polite, where in fact Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to insist. We should ask with the full heart, with that full intention that this is what I need, this is what I want. Right? You have to truly want it. And understanding that Allah can give it to you. Because when a person says if you want, it's as if they doubt that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give them what they're asking. And Allah can do anything. And if you truly believe that, then there's no limit to the dua that you should and can make. And you should actually be making the best dua, the highest of dua. You should be asking for everything. The next one is the heedlessness of the heart, meaning the heart isn't present in the dua. And this is usually where the person is only like repeating a memorized dua and is not present. And this is why I would argue it is better to make a dua in which you are present and mindful of, than a dua that you just memorize that happens to match a certain hadith or a certain ayah, right? Because one is coming from you, it's your heart, it's your need, and one is just, you're repeating it like a parrot, and we don't want to be parrots, okay? The next one is when the dua entails a sin or entails the cutting of ties of kinship, that won't be accepted, and obviously for obvious reasons, and the Prophet mentions that in the hadith. The last but not least, and this is the one that's important to us, is that when a person abandons al-amru bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, this is when their dua is no longer accepted. And this is from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, لَتَأْمُرُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلَتَنْهَوُنَّ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ أَوْ لِيُوشِكَنَّ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَبْعَثَ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابًا مِنْ عِنْدِهِ فَتَدْعُونَهُ فَلَا يَسْتَجَابُ لَكُمْ. you shall enjoin the good and you shall forbid the evil. Or it will be soon that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send upon you a punishment from Him, and then you will call upon Him and He will not answer your call. Meaning, as a result of you not enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. This is enjoining the good and forbidding the evil are the essence of da'wah, right? This is when we call others, what we're calling them to is something good, and we're trying to forbid them from something evil. This is why when we abandon that, when we abandon our way of calling people to Allah, Allah will cease to answer our call upon Him. This is why they're interrelated. That when I call others to Allah, my call to Allah will be much more likely to be accepted. So if I want my dua to be accepted, I should be a person who is engaged in da'wah. And the opposite is also true. If I'm engaged in da'wah, in order for my da'wah to be successful, I have to be engaged in dua, calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regularly. This is why this is really a reminder for myself first, and for all of the du'at second, that we cannot be good callers to Allah unless we are also good callers upon Allah. And that if we want our call upon Allah to be answered, we should be good callers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us and guides us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. With that being the case, so then what's the opposite? Who are the people that their dua is answered? Category number one, the prophets. Why is it that the prophets' dua is answered, right? They're the ones whose du'as are recorded in the Quran, and their du'as were always answered. Why? It's because, I would argue, yes, they're prophets. Obviously, that's a given. But what made them prophets is that they're calling to Allah, right? So it's not just who they were, but it was their actions. And their number one action that we associate with every prophet is that they called people to Allah, and that's why their du'as were accepted. So again, if now we want to do the opposite, unblock our dua and get it accepted, we should be engaged in some form of da'wah. So the Prophet's dua is accepted. Who else's dua is accepted? The parents to their children, a mother to her son, right? A father to his daughter. When we make dua for our kids, our dua is accepted. And this is why we have to be very careful with our duas. Some parents make terrible duas against their own children. This is a mistake that, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us all, Ya Rabbil Alameen, we have to correct. Instead, we should be engaged in making dua for our children regularly, right? Number three is the dua for our fellow believers, the dua for our brothers and sisters. So when I make dua for my brother, بِظَهْرِ الْغَيْبِ, while he doesn't know, that dua is accepted, right? There's a guy, mashallah, and this is in recent times, successful, wealthy, his kids are great, mashallah, successful, role models in the community. Allah has blessed him in every way. He was asked, what is it that makes you such a blessed person? He said, I rarely make dua for myself. I almost always make dua for others, right? For my brother, for my sister, for whoever. And I know that there is an angel there saying, Ameen wa laka bil mithl, Ameen, and to you is the same. And he says, because of that, I can guarantee that my dua will be accepted more for me than it would be if I just selfishly made it for myself alone, right? And this is a beautiful thing that I think is missed on a lot of people. When was the last time I made dua for my fellow believer? In fact, when was the last time I made dua for a stranger? Forget your actual brother and sister. Well, you shouldn't. You should be making dua for them. But let's say I'm standing there praying and I have a guy to my right and a guy to my left. When was the last time I made dua for those people? Why shouldn't I? A lot of times we stand there and we're judging. We're secretly judging. Oh, look, his hands are wrong. Oh, his feet are wrong. This guy this, that guy that. Ya akhi, why is that our mindset? Why is that what we're thinking about? Where instead it should be, let me make dua for him. May Allah bless him and help him and assist him, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Right? Why can't I do that? Or for all of the people that came to the masjid, or for the entire congregation. Why can't I name people by name and make dua for them and their children and their success in this world and in the hereafter? So making dua for others is especially important. This, wallahi, improves our relationships with one another. And one of the best ways to remove ill will towards any other believer is to start making dua for them. Who else is their dua accepted? Anybody who's being oppressed. Which is why right now the dua of the people of Gaza is accepted. The dua of the people of Sudan is accepted. The dua of the people of Kashmir, the dua of the people of Turkestan, all of these people, their dua is accepted. Right? If they can make dua for us, we should be making dua for them. That Allah includes us, Ya Rabbil Alameen, to be resurrected in Jannah with them, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Right? Because I believe we haven't done enough for them. We haven't done enough for our brothers and sisters in Palestine, in Gaza. We haven't. Right? And if we can't even make a dua for them, I would argue that as of now, the only dua that we should be making is that Allah helps them and assists them and doesn't judge us too harshly, because of our letdown of them. This is, I think, the most important dua that we should be making, and we're probably not making it as much as we should. Everything else pales in comparison. A genocide, live streamed, on our phones, on our TV, and not only, we stopped watching, we stopped paying attention, and we ignore it, we continue as if life goes on. Bombs being dropped on families being burnt alive, and we continue as if nothing is wrong. Right? They're going cold in the winter. We said, oh, the bombs stopped. They never really stopped. Oh, there's a ceasefire. But they're starving, they're cold, they're going through, they got flooded. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. So the oppressed, their dua is accepted. The traveler, his dua is accepted. The person who's fasting, the person who's breaking their fast. All of these people, their dua is accepted, right? A worshipper, his dua is accepted. We need to try to include ourselves in these categories as much as possible. Not that we put ourselves, in the path of oppression, but that we make sure that we're not the oppressor, and that we're not committing injustices against other people, right? So one of the ways to get our du'as accepted is to not wrong other people. And I think a lot of our du'at, the callers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to be very cognizant and very aware of this. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He helps us and guides us, forgives us for our shortcomings and our sins. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.